Hey there, welcome to the DFS Build NBA edition. I am Kevin Roberts, joined with Taylor Smith. We are getting ready to go over the DraftKings slate for Tuesday, January 14th. Yesterday was a good night for the projections. They smashed. I had a good hit. We had a lot of members have a good hit. So if you are not in the Discord, if you are not watching these videos every day, you should be doing all those things. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and join our Discord so we can help you win money. Certainly, if you were there, you had a chance to do that last night. So the way we do these, we go position by position, highlighting the top plays. We factor in ownership, projections, matchups, all that stuff, hopefully to point you in the right direction. And then also, you need to be having a lineup optimizer / tool to get you there in the end too. But if you join the Discord, we'll give you updated core plays, and we'll also be helping you right before lock, the last 30 minutes going into lock the best we can. If you're feeling really willing and we help you out, you can hit the super thanks button below the video and donate if you'd like. Otherwise, let's get it going here, position by position. Starting at point guard, we have, whoops, I had everybody clicked off there. We have SGA lead, wrong projections. Great way to start the video. Wrong projections. Okay, here we go. SGA still does lead the way with a 56-point fantasy projection. And right now, he is not going to be owned at all. Obviously, on the road against the Sixers, not like super ideal, but there's no Joel Embiid, so their defense is not quite as nasty. And honestly, Philly on the year just hasn't been that good. I don't think it's super necessary, but I do think it's interesting. And then you can also talk about Trey here too at 10K, and even to a lesser extent, Tyrese Maxey. His projection's way worse, and I actually need to order these. But Trey and SGA are the expensive guys, and then Devin Booker is sandwiched in between them with a 51-point fantasy projection. So let's first talk about them before we get to the guy who's going to be uber shock. Are you having any interest in paying all the way up for SGA? Do you like Devin there, and is Trey on your radar?
I'm not getting any SGA, which is kind of scary. Maybe that'll change. He projects well, of course, but point guard is pretty stacked on this slate. Injuries have really opened a lot of things up. I do like Devin Booker quite a bit, probably more at shooting guard because we do have some point guard only plays kind of occupying this spot. But Booker looks awesome. Since Beal got demoted, he's been much better, much more stable. They're playing Atlanta again for like the second time in a week. So I like the spot on the road. Trae Young, a little overpriced for me. I don't think he's an awesome play on this slate. He's fine, but De'Aaron Fox, Devin Booker, DeJounte Murray is one of my favorite plays on this slate against Chicago. I think that game in general, New Orleans, Chicago, is really interesting because it has a high total. It has a 1.5 point spread, but no one in the game is really projected popular. So if that's the case, I would love to lean into that. And Murray's my favorite way to do that. From the New Orleans side, at least. There's just a lot to love. I think De'Aaron Fox is probably your top overall play at point guard at 8-3 without Malik Monk. Just an awesome play against Milwaukee. He's playing drop. Like, he's just going to kill them from the mid-range all day if Lopez is going to try to wall off the rim. So love that. Love Booker, and then we can get into the value stuff.
Yeah, I'm with you across the board here. Fox looks like the play. This feels very much like a don't get cute play. I think Fox is just a point guard play. What you do elsewhere, that's up to you. I'm locking in Fox. I was just saying in the chat too, in Discord, like, I don't really like to mention core plays that are like really expensive guys, because obviously you want to build like a nice little foundation that you feel good about and go branch out. And then you can kind of do whatever you want. But pretty sure De'Aaron Fox is a core play for me because he was too cheap anyways. He was too cheap with Malik in. And now Malik is out. He's probably going to be facing Damian Lillard for a good portion of the night. Whatever. Who cares about that? It doesn't matter. Too cheap. Projection's too good. I think he's going to smash. Just feels like an obvious play, and I'm not going to go away from it. Love the Devin Booker call. Love the projection on Devin Booker. Matchup with the Hawks. It's amazing. I'm not really going to continue adding on to what you've been saying. Love DeJounte Murray, too. The issue with the Bulls-Pels thing is all these teams are healthy now. So the only guy out for New Orleans that really matters is Brandon Ingram, but you still have Zion, who's limited, so we can't really trust him. Then you have DeJounte and CJ, and even Trey Murphy is back, and he's been soaking up usage. So, like, absolutely one of these dudes is probably going to go off. The question is which one, and now their price tags are all pretty elevated. Trey Murphy's 7-7, DeJounte's 8-6, like even CJ's 7-8. Like, they're all good plays. They just, none of them really stand out. If I had to pick one based off of usage and upside, it is going to be DeJounte, so I'm right there with you. But with the Aaron there and like Devin over there at shooting guard, like, I just don't know how I'm getting there.
Yeah, that's the
I
thing though. Like, it'd be one thing if Murray was owned, but the game environment's so good. He's been excellent with Zion on the floor. It's only a 42-minute sample, but he's at 1.61 points per minute with Zion. That's not sustainable, but you can make a case that Zion being there takes pressure off of him. He's been stuffing the stat sheet. He doesn't only have to score to get there. And Chicago is such a good matchup. Both teams have a great matchup in this game. So I think that's the case for Murray. Like, he's probably overpriced for what he's done, arguably, but I think the ownership's going to reflect that. So I love that. I was wrong about SGA. I actually am over the field on him right now, which is not saying a lot because he's not projected to be very popular, but I do think he's a strong play if you have all the money to spend. I'm a little concerned about that game though, because
Tyrese Maxey is questionable now. So
and Embiid is out, so that could be a fucking complete runaway train.
Music to my ears, dude, because I didn't want to really target Philly guys against OKC anyways. Like, who wants to play people against OKC?
If Maxey's out, like, they're down to Reggie Jackson and Jeff Dowtin at point guard. Like, Reggie Jackson might be playable at 3K flat if he's starting.
I mean, like, in theory,
Reggie Jackson 10 years ago.
In theory, every Sixer guy without Maxey would be very viable. We'd have to even approach core play situation just because they'd get so many minutes and so much usage. But I wouldn't feel good about it. That's the only thing. I'd be pretty hesitant, and that to me would almost border on like bad chalk. Like, I would not really be into it that much.
Yeah, there's major risk. Like, that team could score 80 points.
Well, I mean, look at the Warriors situation the other night. I mean, some of those guys absolutely did hit and were good plays, but then you look at like somebody like Dennis Schroeder who like 23. So like that is definitely a reality that we could be looking at if we play some of these guys like Oubre and PG-13 and Yabu. Like, in theory, yeah, they'd be good plays, but they're also super risky because the matchup sucks. But kind of to your point on DeJounte, yeah, if he's not going to be owned in the best game environment of the night, absolutely, he's a great tourney play. I don't think he's anything close to a core play right now, just because Devin and De'Aaron just look better. So I don't know if I'm really going to play him, but I do love the fact that he's not going to be owned. Moving right along here, even if Maxey's in, not paying 9.6K for Maxey against OKC. And by the way, when I say things like that, obviously in tournaments, you could do whatever you want. If you want to pay Maxey at no ownership with his role without Embiid, you can do that. Just like we're talking about DeJounte. He doesn't stand out as like a must-have, but if it's going to be like the best game of the night and nobody's playing DeJounte Murray, yeah, you can play DeJounte Murray. Like, that makes a lot of sense. The question is, how are you doing it? Are you doing it because you're pivoting away from De'Aaron Fox, who is just a better play? Or are you doing it because you're like not playing KD or not playing Devin? Like, there has to be some opportunity cost there that you have to weigh, right? Like, you have to kind of feel good about why you're moving over to DeJounte and who you're sacrificing to do that. All right, so there's honestly, and the other thing, by the way, point guard is just incredibly loaded. So I do think SGA is very interesting at his current ownership, but I do not think I'm going to go there for the reasons you said, but also the fact that there's just too many other guards that are cheaper that project so well that I just don't see the reason for it, unless you just want like the raw points. But if you're going to do that and you're going to pay 10.5K, why not just go up and get Giannis or Jokic? You'd feel a lot better about it, I think. So that's probably what I would do if I'm going to spend that high. As we go on here, like, there's other guys who look okay. Simon's at 6.8K. He's fine. Russ has been crushing. 6.9K is a fine price. I don't hate it. These guys just don't feel like priorities. I'm probably going to be up here in this 8 to 9K range at point guard, and then we're looking at punts. Obviously, the most obvious ones with Tyrese Haliburton doubtful would be TJ McConnell and Andrew Nembhard. Both look really good. Obviously, McConnell feels a little bit better because you're saving some cash, and he's a really good per minute guy, but both look awesome. The matchup with the Cavs isn't great. There is that same situation with Philly versus OKC, right? It's not the best matchup in the world, but these guys are cheaper and I feel like a little bit more battle tested and more reliable than somebody like Reggie Jackson. But why don't you give your thoughts on those guys and then kind of trickle into the Philly thing?
Yeah, I love McConnell. I always love McConnell anyway. Like, even if Halliburton's in, he's a guy who still kind of makes the player pool. But with Halliburton out, he's just a smash. Like, the minutes, he might not play more than 24 minutes, but 24 minutes for him is like more than enough to get there. Even off the bench, I'm not concerned about that. Nembhard, perfectly fine play, a little more expensive. So I do prefer McConnell, but Nembhard does have the useful SG eligibility, so that comes in handy. In the same range, though, I love D'Angelo Russell. The only issue is that's a late game and he's questionable. Maybe we'll get an update before lock, but he's only missed a couple games. I would imagine he would be pretty full from a minute standpoint since he's only missed, 1 or 2 games or something like that. So 20 plus minutes of D'Lo at a 5.5 salary and a great matchup against Portland looks really strong to me. Yeah, Scoot Henderson, okay value. Vit Krejci, if you want to punt all the way, is fine. Don't love that. Devin Carter, another full punt.
I do not love Vit Krejci. I saw that he's popping in the optimal right now, which certainly gives me cause for pause because the optimal freaking smashed last night. Using these projections, the optimal was like what got me the big win. So like, I mean, do we just keep rolling out the optimal over here? I don't know. I think I certainly might do it at least once. I guess Krejci's going to be a god now, but in a vacuum, I don't want to play Krejci. I'd rather do something else for sure. That would be like,
like I don't want to play Krejci, but
no,
he is popping pretty big time. I think you can consider Devin Carter. Just been really good per minute since he came back. No Monk, should be a few more minutes. Certainly not a safe play. But cheap enough. And I think Lonzo Ball, if Io is out again, I think Lonzo's been starting. He's 4,800. The minutes came up in the last game. Love that game environment in general. I think he and Kobe White, at a more expensive salary, of course, are pretty interesting.
Yeah, so to your D'Lo call, I love it. And guess what? This is what I'm going to do if I'm going to go that route. D'Lo is a great play if he's back. And if he's not back, just play Keon Johnson. He's a fine play against the Blazers at like basically the same price. In fact, to protect yourself, just slide in Keon Johnson at 5.6. And then if he doesn't play, or I mean, if D'Lo's back, then just turn to D'Lo. That's if I'm going to do that, that's what I would do. I'd set myself up a little bit for protection. And by the way, if you end up just throwing him down at utility, there's other options too with the Blazers there, depending on what the salary looks like for you. The other guy you mentioned was the Bulls guy, Lonzo. Yeah, I don't mind that. The prices come up a little bit, but so have the minutes. So great per minute guy, great matchup. I don't hate it if Kobe and or Dosunmu are out. If those guys are in, I'm kind of not super excited to play the Bulls at full strength.
No, that's more of an if Io's out type situation because he's been out for a week or so. There was one more I wanted to shout out, but I can't. Oh, like Cason Wallace, too, just like okay. Yeah. Cason Wallace is always wildly cheap. He's playing 30 minutes.
Nothing wrong with that.
Never love it, but he's fine.
Damn sure better than Vit Krejci. I mean,
right.
Not by much. Yeah, I also like the Devin Carter call, not because it's safe. Devin Carter is a GPP play for sure, but let's think about it here. Malik is out. There have to be like 15 to 20 minutes to go around off the bench. Him and Kevin Huerter are going to be splitting it up a little bit. But then, like Keon Ellis, I mean, he looks good too. I don't know if we touched on him really at 4.1K. He looks pretty good with the 30-minute projection.
Guard, so we haven't got
okay, yeah, good call. But regardless, he will start, right? And then those other two guys are going to get minutes off the bench. So what if Keon struggles or gets in foul trouble? Suddenly, this Carter guy, he is a good per minute guy. He could end up having a ton of minutes at 3.2K. It's not safe, but it's kind of like Sheed last night with the Raptors. He projected well because there was minutes to go around, right? So at 3.2K, I think there are worse punts to be had. Like you could play Vit Krejci, for instance. All right, moving on to a shooting guard. I mean, in theory, Vit Krejci is fine. He's a fine punt. He's getting minutes. He's on the Hawks in a good game, so it's whatever. Anyways, Devin Booker leads the way with a 51-point fantasy projection at shooting guard. I agree with you. I'm going Fox at point guard. If I play Devin, obviously you slide him at shooting guard at a not amazing position. There's only 4 guys with a projection over 40 fantasy points. Levine's projection doesn't really match up with the price for me. I think the game environment is good. He's been awesome. If you want to play Levine at 8.6K, you can. I think at this point, if I'm going to pay up at this spot, I would probably be looking at Devin Booker, or I'd pay down and go get like Paul George, perhaps. I think they're kind of the same guy on this slate. A little bit more risk with Paul George, given the worst matchup, and possibly like the Maxey thing could be either awesome for Paul George and make him like the best play of the night, or it could be a complete death sentence and completely ruin it. So Paul George, like I don't think if Maxey's out, I don't want to play into ownership on Paul George. I don't really want to play into ownership on any of the Philly guys. I'm not going to feel good about that situation whatsoever. If Maxey is in, I think I can just kind of avoid the Sixers, like, and just not worry about it at all. But that said, Paul George does look good. Like it is a decent projection and he's not super expensive. Also, let's talk about Kyrie Irving, who might be back. Obviously, if Kyrie is out, all the Mavs value, they still look good. Dinwiddie, Grimes, Clay, all these guys are still in play. If he's in, I'm kind of like not into Mavs at all. I guess you could entertain Kyrie at 9.3K. He would have a lot of usage. There's a little bit of concern of maybe being limited or rusty or what have you in his first game back, and he's not cheap. So I think I would just go to Devin here instead. Like, this feels like I'm just eating chalk, but honestly, like, these are two spots where I really don't mind eating the chalk and then getting different in another way.
Yeah, I don't really see a lot of need. Like Kyrie at 9.3 is pretty full price. Without Luka. So matchup's fine. Denver's not quite powerhouse defensively like they were a couple years ago when they had KCP and Bruce Brown and people like that. But like Devin Booker is such a better play in a better game environment, a little bit cheaper. I don't know. Like Kyrie's fine pivot at no ownership compared to Devin Booker's 20% or whatever he's going to be. But I'm just going to eat the Booker thing. I think he might be the best play on the entire slate.
Or KD.
KD, like they're both like the same play. They both project identically actually right now.
I know. I just don't see this. We always talk about like it's just like getting too cute thing. Kyrie Irving is a fine play if he's in. You can play him, and he's not going to be owned probably. But Devin just feels like the better play.
Yep.
All right. Totally so going down here, Donovan Mitchell has been just ass water, dude.
Awful.
What awful. So the second we say that, Donovan Mitchell is going to drop 50 points, 50 real fucking points. I'll say this. If you're going to be stacking up the Pacers like you probably should, Donovan Mitchell's in play. Darius Garland and Evan Mobley, they're in play. They're fine. But they're another team like the Celtics that like if they have everybody, it's really tough to differentiate and point out one guy that looks awesome. And like, I have to have that guy. Like you can have a run back on the Pacers or just play Pacers and don't worry about that. Don't worry about forcing it. That said, Donovan Mitchell has been so bad that his price has come down to 8.3. So he's in play. You can consider him for sure. The projection's not that bad. And he does have a ceiling. If he could ever blow up again, it'll probably be tonight now that I said that. Nobody else down here really stands out until we get to Benedict Mathurin. He looks like a really, really good value at 5.8. Obviously, Nembhard's available there too. You can certainly just pick one or the other. I'm kind of in on 3 Pacers at least tonight. The matchup isn't good, but the prices and usage will be. So I'm that's where I'm going. D'Lo, you said I'm down for that. Pivoting between D'Lo and Keon if D'Lo doesn't play. Shadon Sharp, minutes are good. Projection and overall production is just okay. Oubre could look really good here if Maxi's out at 6K, but his price is coming up and the matchup sucks, so I probably won't do that. And then a lot of the same values are carrying over here with Keon Ellis and Kason Wallace. Anybody else you see that you feel like highlighting?
Ben Shepherd, another full punt at 3-2, like maybe a few more minutes to go around without Halliburton for Indiana. He's already having a role without Neesmith playing, so he's like another Vit Krejci, though, like super bad per minute, not someone I'm really excited to play. He's just like almost free, so that might keep him relevant, but let me see. He's not even probably going to make my player pool, so I will retract that statement. I do think a good play is Bogdanovich at 4-3. No Jalen Johnson. I think he might be questionable himself, but if he's in, he's playing like upper 20s minutes. He's cheap. We like that game in general. I think he's an okay enough play, not a priority. I do like Keon Ellis a lot more for what it's worth in that same range. Kason Wallace again, Lou Dort, like these guys are always fucking popping, and I always fucking hate it, but they're viable by default.
Yeah, I think in that range, I'm with you. I think Keon Ellis, like I don't really like the idea of pairing Keon and Fox together that much, but I think you can. I think he looks probably like the safest value down here. I like the Boggy call. If he actually plays at 4.3K, he is too cheap. I do think he is fine. By the way, I just want to reiterate the Keon Johnson thing. I do not want to play Keon Johnson if D'Lo is in. If D'Lo is out, I think he's a fine pivot away from
Cam
D'Lo.
Johnson also might be like he's questionable too.
Yeah, I know. So
the usage could really tank for Keon if those guys.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I think definitely. I just think if you're going to do that, you're playing D'Lo if D'Lo plays, and if D'Lo's out, I think Keon's okay as a pivot because where else are you going to go? You have to do something. So I think that's okay. If you want to play for D'Lo at like no ownership to end the night, I think that's probably a decent strategy. But Otherwise, if you don't really care about D'Lo that much or you think it's just too risky, then I don't want Keon Johnson unless we get news early. There's one other guy. Oh, yeah, Max Strus at 4K flat. If he's going to keep starting at 4K, I'm okay with that. I like that. He only got 9 fantasy points last time. He was kind of chalky, and I faded it. Or maybe I missed it, actually. I just missed the boat on it a little bit. But, hey, 4K, we're looking for punts that are viable. He should start and push for 30 minutes probably, or 25 to 30 maybe. I think he's okay, especially against Pacers. Solid matchup. All right, let's move it right along. Small forward, we have Paul George leading the way. This seems like a really gross position. Like I said, for Paul George, Zach LaVine both look fine. I think Trey Murphy feels a little bit overpriced with all the Pels getting kind of healthy here. He does still have a good usage rate in general, but Zion and DeJounte kind of dominate the usage, so I just don't think I'm going to do that. Denny Avdia looks good per usual. The only issue, he is questionable. If he is in, if we have a good feeling about him against the Nets, I do like him a good amount at 7K just because I do not think he'll be owned. That is interesting to me. Mathurin, you can have him here too. Not going to pay for Cam Johnson at 7.4 in his first game back. I think MPJ just continues to be underpriced. Like, he's just a decent play at 6.2. Nothing wrong with that at all.
DeMar.
Yeah, DeMar. Yeah. With no Malik Monk, DeMar looks pretty good at 6.8K. Solid projection. He's going to probably get a little
cheap,
get a little overlooked. Yeah. I mean, he hasn't been good. So there's that. I think obviously most of the usage is going to Fox and Sabonis. Has he? All I know is
Monk being that's a pretty big deal. Like Monk.
This is when I played him against the Warriors.
He's been really hit or miss, but like Monk's absence is pretty meaningful. So if Monk was in, I probably wouldn't really be interested, but it's a weak position. Like you said, he's cheap for who he is in general. I mentioned Fox against the drop coverage of Milwaukee. Like, he loves the mid-range. Obviously, that's DeMar's entire game. So I feel like he can also thrive in this spot. No Middleton, for what it's worth, decent enough defender, missing from the Bucks lineup also. I think DeMar's a really strong play, and I don't think he's going to get owned with Fox likely to be chalky. I really like DeMar for the value at that spot.
You really could play them together if you don't want to pay all the way up for Devin shooting. Or
I think he can too, yeah. But
he's not shooting guard too, is he? No, he's small forward only. But even so, if you don't want to go, I'm starting to sour on LaVine and PG-13 considerably. I think they're still fine plays as they stand, but I do think dropping down to saving 1K to 1.6K to DeMar is not a bad idea at all. There's extra usage to go, and Fox was a good play anyway, so certainly DeMar could benefit, and Fox could just be Fox still, and it could all work out. One of the guys in our Discord was kind of high on Quentin Grimes. I think at 5.4K, he is a fine GPP dart in general. I don't really think he's a priority, but if Kyrie is out, he looks good at 5.4K. I'll just say that. Jarius Walker at 3.3, he's kind of popping. It's probably just because he's cheap. Don't have a lot of interest in him personally.
He's popping a lot.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if I'll play him either. Like, he might be another one who's just too thin. I don't know if we need to go all the way down to that. But he is fine if you need a full punt.
Right.
Obviously, in the last game we saw, he's got some upside. Yeah.
You see anybody else that you feel really obligated to call out? I mean, Caleb Martin and Lou Dort are going to get minutes. I think I prefer Lou Dort. Yeah, I know. If I had to pick one, I'd go Lou Dort just because he's cheap. But yeah, nothing else really calls me. I think small forward is probably a good spot to live in the low mid range. Mathurin or DeMar, those are probably my two favorite plays there.
Mathurin, DeMar, and Avdia. And then if you want someone cheap, I think Kamara is pretty good at 4.8.
Oh,
39 minutes in the last game.
Yeah.
Pretty good spot. And I think you can punt with Torian with Middleton.
Torian Prince? Yeah, of course.
But,
it's super risky. He can go full Tony Snell on you. You never know. But yeah, I don't hate it. It's cheap.
I don't think you need it either, but it's okay.
It's just is it necessary? I don't know. No, I think you can save enough with guys like you mentioned, like Keon or Kamara, and you can save and still build a nice lineup. It depends what you want to do, though. Do you want to go get Jokic? You want to go get Jokic and Giannis? Then sure, you need to start looking at these punts. Okay, so speaking of that, Giannis leads the way at power forward with a 57.55 fantasy projection. He is not cheap, but he's also not egregiously priced. He does have a massive ceiling. The Kings are a middle-of-the-road matchup. I don't hate it. I think if you don't want to play Jokic, dropping down to Giannis is not the worst thing in the world. Right now, he's not carrying massive ownership either. I'm okay with it. The only problem is KD looks awesome at 9.1K, and if you want to go down further, both Jalen Williams and Evan Mobley and Siakam all look really, really good. Jalen projects the best. I think, though, at 7.1, it's going to be hard to ignore Siakam for sure. Another user in Discord was high on Zion Williamson. Here's the deal. Zion Williamson is a little bit expensive, and the Pels are kind of healthy outside of Ingram. The matchup is amazing, and he does have a ceiling. In 28 minutes in his first 2 games, he's had 38 and 41 fantasy points. So, like, clearly Zion can ball. Like, if we feel good about him getting 30+ minutes, he's okay for tourneys. Just not a priority right now, because not too far behind him is a guy you can save 1.8K and get Siakam, who without Haliburton has a pretty good ceiling. Like, he's a pretty darn good play. So right now my gut is saying not to pay for Giannis at power forward. My gut is to go with KD or look at Jalen, Siakam, and maybe even Mobley. And then obviously you still have Avia you can use there too, who's basically the same price as Siakam.
Yeah, like Giannis is appealing without Middleton, obviously, but I'm pretty heavily under on him. I think it is a pretty rich position overall. So Giannis might be kind of my hold on to your butts fate of the day, and just hope he doesn't murder you.
Yeah.
But like you said, Durant at 9-1 looks awesome. That's the reason I don't think Zion's really needed, because you can get 38 minutes of KD against Atlanta or 28 minutes of Zion. I'd just take KD there, I think. Avdia, we mentioned Siakam, Jalen Williams. There was another one. I think Bobby Portis is okay at 5.
I like Bobby Portis. I like him a lot.
I don't really want him if he's going to be owned. Like with Middleton out, maybe he gets a few more minutes. I think I prefer Keegan Murray if you're shopping in that range for a cheap power forward. The usage comes up without Monk. His minutes floor is super high. Like, he plays 36 minutes every night, essentially. I like that game in general. Murray's a really strong value. In the same vein, Obi Toppin, fine under 4K for Indiana. Obviously, with Haliburton missing from the lineup, he's playable. And then that kind of does it. Like, I really don't think you have to go far beyond the KD, Siakam, Williams, Avdia range unless you're punting with Murray or Portis.
Or Prince.
Or Prince.
Yeah, I just like live in the mid-range at power forward. These guys all look amazing. Avdia, by the way, is questionable, so he's probably like you. Do you really want to commit to such a risky play? It's tough. I don't know, but nobody's gonna be on him, and he's pretty good and against the Nets, so I like it. You gotta fade Siakam at the same price. That feels not great. You have to take on the risk of him not even freaking playing, so that's not cool either. So I'm probably not going to do Avdia. I just want to highlight him because he looks like a really good play still. And honestly, there's so many good plays here. I think I'm starting off with KD, but honestly, I might just slide him to center and probably play like Siakam or Jalen here. But they all look good. All the guys we talked about look good, and you can play Giannis if you'd like to. It's just not something I'm going to do probably on this slate.
It's worth noting that Oso Ighodaro started the second half over Plumlee in the last game. Not a good per minute guy, despite being a big, but he's 3.5. So if he's again, I think he's playable.
Yeah, of course. What's his price?
3.5.
That's palatable. The risk is baked in. Okay, so if you don't want to play Giannis, you probably should at least consider playing Jokic, who has the best projection on the slate at 68 fantasy points. It's gonna be tough because just the mid-range, the high-end mid-range, just all across the board. All the guys under Giannis and Jokic look so damn good. But Jokic, those raw points are really tough to pass up. Let me pull this up really quick, actually. It's disgusting. Listen to this. Jokic in 3 games against the Mavs is averaging 75 fantasy points per game. That's absurd. So it's not a matchup he is fearful of. Aaron Gordon is back, so that could cut into his per-minute rate a little bit. But Aaron Gordon's limited, so maybe it won't be a big deal. Jokic is pulling a considerable amount of ownership for a 12.2K guy. So I think this slate is really going to depend for me what I do with Jokic. If I fade Jokic, I am going to live in that mid-range and fade all the top studs, and that's going to feel great until it doesn't, right? Or I'm going to play him and just try to be as balanced as I can without stretching myself too thin. So we'll see what happens. Right now, I am leaning towards just going balanced on this slate. Speaking of flag plant strategy, that's probably what I'm going to do. I just the way the slate is shaping up and the way these guys are projecting, that looks the best to me. So Giannis and Jokic do lead the way at center. Then there's KD third at 51 fantasy points. Sabonis is right behind him, who's going to be like half his own. So Sabonis is an interesting pivot away from KD at center. I don't hate it. I think I just prefer KD, cheaper and projects a little bit better, and then the better game environment. There's also Vooch, who looks pretty good against the Pels. Don't have a problem with him. Saves even more money compared to those two guys, and we know Vooch has a ceiling. But like I said before, with all the Bulls getting healthy, if Ayo and Kobe are in, I don't know. I'm not like super. It feels weird, doesn't it? Because like none of these guys really stand out as must-haves in like the game of the night. So if you want to go against that and just eat the salary and like play these guys in a really advantageous spot, like not a crazy ownership, I'm all for that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. As we go down here, we start to lose a little bit of interest, but Hartenstein at 7K looks pretty good. Ayton, projection is not amazing, but the price is. Ayton against the Nets, that sounds pretty cool if you want to go there. Miles Turner would get a little bit of more usage probably, but minutes projection, overall projection don't look great. And then you mentioned Bobby. I don't mind Bobby. He's not like a core play, but with no Chris Middleton, Bobby will get more usage, and he should get more minutes as well. And then Yabu at 5.6 with no Embiid or Drummond. He is not a core play for me like he has been in the past, but 5.6K for a guy who got 39 minutes in his last game, and he certainly has hit before. He's not the worst play in that range.
Yeah, I'm not really on him. I think I would rather play Capella at 4.9, like Okongwu. He and Okongwu were kind of both projected to be popular, but that's just a pretty cheap salary for Capella, a really good per minute guy, even if the minutes are generally not very safe. Like you're kind of getting that baked into the value there. Love the Ayton call, love Hartenstein. I think dollar for dollar, my favorite center is probably Derek Lively. 8 assists in the last game.
Going up against Jokic, that feels really good.
Well, I think he's a pretty good per minute guy. He's a little bit cheap. Not expecting 8 assists again, but we saw him do fine in this matchup 2 days ago. Yeah. I think it's pretty interesting. I don't think he's going to be chalky either. I think it's a pretty good price tag.
No, he projects well, and he's a good price. I don't have a problem with it whatsoever. I am definitely a little bit hesitant just because he could get into foul trouble, and that could be bad. But yeah, dollar for dollar, he is pretty good at the position for sure. I think you mentioned Okongwu. You can play him or Capella. Messi is a good price, but with Zion back, I have no interest. I'm mentioning him only because I hope people don't like fall into the trap of his price, because his price does look good and the matchup is good, right? Like that, those things are true. So he could get there, but Zion is really going to just eat in that paint, and he's going to take away a lot of the production from Messi. So I do not think I would want to go play Messi on this slate, at least not right now. And not when Zion's in. Anytime Zion's out, yeah, fire up Messi. Trey Lyles gets minutes at 3.7K. I think he's an okay punt as the slate stands. You said Iguodala at 3.5. He's projected for 23 minutes. Kind of the same play. You could use him too. Lyles is a better, more proven per minute producer, though. Don't see anybody else that I have to play. So let's wrap it up there. Why don't we wrap it up with your flag plant and overall strategy for the slate?
Yeah, I'm not going to pay all the way up for Giannis. I guess that's kind of my flag plant, like an anti-flag plant. I don't think you're wrong to play him, but I just like the other values elsewhere. I love Jokic at the top. Like I'd much rather pay for Jokic than pay for Giannis.
Yep.
Otherwise, mid-range stuff, KD, Booker, Fox, DeJounte Murray, shouted him out. My flag plant was going to be Fox, and then the Monk thing happened, which inflated Fox's ownership. So it's not like a really cool play there that's really out on a limb anymore. So I'll go with DeJounte as my flag plant.
Yeah, I don't really have like a clear flag plant other than the fact that I don't feel the need to pay up for a stud on this slate. I guess if the slate were shaping up a little bit differently, it might have been SGA, but the point guard value, there's too much to like a point guard. I don't think SGA is necessary. Giannis is fine, but I think if you're going to pay up, it would be Jokic for me, and it's just annoying that they're both carrying ownership. They're kind of splitting the ownership as it stands. Okay, so if I have to do a flag plant, it's going to be KD over Booker. They're kind of splitting the ownership between them too. Booker, I would imagine Booker ends up carrying a little bit more ownership just because he's been better lately. So I just, how these things work when you have 2 stars. It just kind
I
of,
feel like
there's an ebb
KD
and flow.
might be a little more owned just because the guard spots are so rich with awesome plays that KD could kind of move to the top. I think they're both going to be chalky. I just think KD might be a little bit more owned.
That is very possible given all the guys that are starting to open up here. We'll see how it works out. I guess I prefer KD, and we'll see where the ownership falls. But yeah, nobody else really stands out like I have to play them. I think building a high end core like KD and Fox, those 2 guys are like very, very high on my priority list. And I really just need to make a decision on Jokic for tonight. That's going to be the big thing for me. We had a cheap core. It's going to be the Pacers for me. It's going to be McConnell, Nembhard, and Mathurin. And then that's another decision point. Do I go 4 Pacers deep and try to get Siakam in there too? The projection and price are really, really good. The only thing is you're really pot committed if you have 4 Pacers and that game gets out of hand. So it's definitely a decision point for sure. And we will get more into it in Discord. So definitely be sure to click the link and join our Discord so you can get up to the minute advice leading into lock. We go live in the chat with 30 minutes going into the 6 p.m. CT lock. And we'll also drop some core plays, update the projections, and try to help you win. Hopefully this helps you out too. This helps us break down everything for us and kind of, figure our process out. And the goal is for it to do the same for you as well. If it does help you in any way, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. Both those things help us out a lot, get us a little bit of exposure, lets YouTube know we're doing something right. And if you want to donate, you can hit the super thanks below the video, and that would be awesome too. All right, thanks for watching and good luck.